2, and 1. All right, what's up, everyone? Today we are tuning in with a former professional athlete, a flamethrower on the mound. More importantly, some might say he's very good looking, and it wouldn't be surprising if you say that because I would agree because it's my brother. Two obviously genetically gifted individuals that have no receding hairlines and stunning good looks.
None whatsoever.
Is that what this is going to be audio only, right?
This my five head is already disputing all of your claims.
Well, no one's going to know. They're going to have to assume that you are a near equivalent to that of Fabio or something.
I should have worn a hat. If this is audio only, then yes, I have no receding hairline.
There's actually just a constant breeze waving your hair in the wind.
That's all that it is. It helps me look like I'm constantly in motion. Like wherever I'm going fast.
Not fast, but at a mild pace, like brisk.
That man has places to be.
The place you left was exciting, but the place you're going to is more exciting.
He really wants to get there, but not so much that it's harried or hurried, but just that this man obviously has a lot of things to do today.
A lot of things that are important, but you common folk couldn't even begin to wrap your head around.
I don't want to hijack this, but if it's not video, I think it's important to tell your listeners how frequently the two of us get confused for the same person.
It's true.
There's been many times where you have had conversations and have been too afraid to inform whoever it was that you were speaking with that you are not, in fact, me. And I can't tell you how many times people have waved at me thinking that I was you. And that's despite having several years in between us.
This is true. Absolutely. But for some reason, I look like Matt Stafford and you don't.
I think it has to do with, for me, it's the proximity of your eyes. Like your eyes are closer together and you have the Matt Stafford eyes closer together kind of look. Thankfully, I don't look like that, but I think you look just like Matt Stafford.
If we came together, and formed a single human, we'd have the arm of Matt Stafford and the looks of Matt Stafford, but not the contract of Matt Stafford.
This is an interesting conversation, interesting path to go down, because I think in many ways you talk about areas that you've been successful and areas that I've been successful. And we don't tend to share a lot of the same athletic gifts or in most cases lack thereof. But it is interesting because I do think there's different strengths and weaknesses that exist between us, especially when I look at your, well, you know what, that might be wrong, because I think I take that back. The biggest area that you've been successful is I think you've been able to identify those weaknesses and put forward a cohesive plan to address them. And that's something that I'm sure we'll get into later in this conversation. But it's kind of the targeted approach to athletic training, dependent upon the individual's strength and weaknesses, as opposed to the blanket, here's a binder, everyone do this program type of thing that I think we seem to see, ironically, at higher levels of athletic training as opposed to lower levels.
I thought you were going to go more down the path that we realized you weren't that good looking, Max, and you got very good fitting clothes to counteract a solution that to counteract a problem that otherwise wouldn't be overcome. By the way, this was a disaster of an intro because I didn't even tell you who the hell I'm talking to, assuming this is no video.
They know that I'm your brother.
They know your brother, the brother, but they don't know what you did. This is a
what I did.
Everyone can it. This is a professional athlete. This is someone who got paid to play a game. Now, I don't care as to what level that is. And I don't care as to what sport that is. If you get to be an individual who is paid to play and have a Topps baseball card deal, $5 check.
$10. Please don't go selling my career earnings short.
But then no, there's something to talk about it, right? So an interesting thing is, but first off, that is an accolade that many don't reach. So a big round of applause from our listeners.
They're going nuts, I'm sure, for the $10 man.
But but it's important to bring up because it highlights some level of excellence, whether that is not the peak of excellence. So you could say, well, that is, the all-stars, but it is a peak or near the peak that many don't achieve. So that is something to be said. You played 3 years in college, right?
That's correct. 3 years, Division I baseball.
You played a year. Actually, fun fact, played varsity his freshman year of basketball. This is high school, mind you. Transferred schools, went down to JV, got tossed out of a couple games. Very exciting player. And then realized that baseball was your sport. And ironically, I almost did the same in reverse. I played half a season of JV baseball and quit and pieced out.
I think it's important for your listeners to realize that my varsity basketball my freshman year was at a school of like 50 people. I'm exaggerating. It was like 200, but still, I think you get the idea.
I did play on the 8th grade team as like a 4th grader that one year.
I think they gave you someone else's jersey and just prayed that. I mean,
I think I scored 7 points.
If you really think about it, right? Is the opposing coach, if you come out and say, how dare you, they had this ringer, he was a 4th grader, like you're really kind of just shaming yourself. You kind of have to just, even if you know what's happening, you got to keep your mouth shut. Otherwise you're going to dime yourself out that you couldn't guard a 4th grader. That's
pretty funny to say it that way. So that's the intro. Well, that's who you are. And that's
who I am.
That's who I was. Once always an athlete is the name of this cage, Alec. I'm not sure.
Wow. I played right into that one. That was not scripted, people.
I'm not sure if you recall.
That was totally organic.
Always an athlete. It's not who he was, it is who he is.
There's a lot to be said for that, though, because I think when you play sports at any level, a lot of that stuff does carry over. And I find as I get older, and I'm certainly not old by any stretch of the imagination, but older, you still can't kind of shake the principles that have been instilled in you by sport, which I'm sure we'll cover later as well, the kind of intangibles of sport.
I don't know if you know how many questions I have lined up, but it's not that many.
I have no idea.
We're gonna dive into that later.
If this is like any of our conversations, it's gonna quickly devolve into stories that no one else finds funny, that no one else knows about, that only you and I enjoy, and it's just gonna be totally for the enjoyment of both you and I. Everyone else be damned. You're gonna
we'll attempt to sell it as an NFT.
That we're not gonna.
That's a joke.
I worry that one of these days you're gonna take it upon yourself to just record one of our phone calls, those hour-and-a-half long phone calls where we ramble and go forward. It's people are gonna envision me as standing on a soapbox with a sign that says the end is near, because that's how within a half hour of the conversations you and I have, they turn into that.
It's a common theme, and with that in mind, we're going to segue here because we're not going down that path.
Already gone off the rails.
Question number 1. This is submitted from the audience being me. What is it like getting paid to play a sport?
Okay, so that's a lot of these questions, right? Like I would love to sum them up in quick one-word answers or hashtags.
You're not supposed to. It's a podcast. I don't have that many questions.
Good. Because it's you run the gamut of emotions, and I think the first thing that happened to me was you because you're there, it becomes a job, and psychologically that's something that's difficult to handle. And what I mean by that is when you play high school baseball or collegiate baseball, I mean, even collegiate baseball, you can have a bad outing, you can have a bad performance, and it's not like your high school is going to kick you out of the high school and be like, you had a bad game, you're going to the streets, right? So there's a certain level of the sport that you have a certain level of security with it, right? So you're looking at it not in the short term, but in the long term. Like, okay, well, my freshman year of high school baseball didn't go well, but I have 3 more years until I'm a senior when, it really matters. So you kind of have that built-in lifespan. The second you ink that contract, it's what have you done for me lately? Especially if you're a lower round guy. Obviously, if you're a higher round guy or someone with more draft equity or even monetary equity put into you, you understand very quickly that you're going to have more chances. But I have to imagine for even those types, there's a certain pressure to succeed immediately. So the first issue when you say what is it like to get paid, I hope it's something that people who aspire to be professional athletes have a chance to experience. Because to your point, always an athlete. I'm sorry, my dog is crying. To the point where you're always an athlete, that's kind of the goal and aspiration, right? You say, I want to be a professional. So to hit that mark, no one can take that from you. I don't care that I was a single A Scribini, right? I don't care that my stats are, I wouldn't even say they were mediocre. They borderlined on bad.
Oh, that's tough.
At the end of the day, right? Like, you were a professional athlete, and regardless of the length of your, hold on.
Oh, you keep talking. We have a dog arrive. It's not that loud. You're fine.
All right.
There's no editing in this, so that's going to be live in there. You got to understand. You got to make it. This podcast is kind of like being an athlete.
You got to make a play. The punches. This is unexpected. I think she hears me talking to you and she's panicking.
You know what, listeners at home? I expected this. This was fully expected.
To any listeners at home, I would advise you not to get a Brazilian Mastiff. That's my only recommendation. I'm kidding.
Just enlighten us about your 98 mile per hour fastball.
Yeah. But it changes things, right? Because I think there's a psychological component, and this is where I certainly struggled with the game, especially being someone who, like, my career through college, especially, it was up and down in terms of my performance, right? So when you hit professional baseball, you're so focused on the 1 meter in front of you. What am I doing now? How am I performing right now? That it's tough to let go of that, and it's tough to perform in such a fashion that you can put aside all the pressures. So a lot of the guys who perform well and who play well, I think they have a couple of different things, these themes that I've noticed. The first one is they have this unwavering confidence in themselves, right? They are God's gift to whatever sport they're playing. And I think that's why a lot of laymen kind of can be rubbed the wrong way with certain athletes and the way they talk and carry themselves. But you have to. It's sort of this armor, because when you think about it, the strongest critique you're going to face, especially when playing any sort of professional sport, comes not from the people viewing you or the reporters. I mean, I say that like minor league baseball had to me, but the cross checkers, the scouts, the coaches, any of these people, the strongest critique you're ever going to encounter is yourself. And so these people who have these unwavering confidence that, like, they are, they will never fail at baseball, that lends itself to a lot of success. I think the other one we see, and we kind of joke about it at times, right, are these people who are too stupid to realize exactly how high pressure of a situation they're in, right? And I think for anyone else who falls in the middle, the very first thing you have to get used to when playing professional baseball, the very first thing, you're asking, like, what does it feel like? The very first thing you have to deal with is the understanding that this is still the same game. This is still the same sport that you've played. And a lot of the times, the things that have gotten you to this point, you can continue to do to be successful. So I guess in my long-winded roundabout way to answer that is, it's a dream come true. I cannot stress that enough. I don't care if you got a $10 tops contract for a baseball card, or if you're getting $350 million for a 10-year contract. That's something no one can ever take from you. And it's, for a lot of us, there's the 6-year-old, there's the T-baller inside of all of us who says, I'm going to be a professional athlete. And this is some sort of validation to that younger version of yourself that, yeah, obviously this is probably not the outcome you expected. But it's a nod to that younger version of you to say, hey, you know what? We did it. So that's pretty cool.
And for those that didn't make it, like myself, we always live in shame.
Yes. You're lucky I'm on this podcast.
No, I'm kidding. That's actually really well said. And it's something where when I played college basketball, a little D3, and knew you wasn't going to play anywhere else afterwards, there is a level of acceptance immediately upon entering that realm, because it's finite. And so part of the unknown, I'd imagine, with professional baseball, any professional sport, is the fact that it is obviously finite, but not determined to a given length. And so when you start to ponder or worry or consciously think about the situation, what happens is, I assume, is because for most people, it's not this massive security of 10 years, 30 million, 300 million, whatever it might be. You act or you feel the weight of every day much more so than you would otherwise.
Yes.
Because the options are to either assume that somehow you're there for 10 years, or you unfortunately realize that every day could be your last day.
And you have to walk that fine line, because I think if you walk into the league, any league in professional sports, and you say to yourself, well, I'll be here 10 years, that's not doing you any service, because the fact of the matter is you don't have those 10 years. They're not given to you. So while you can tell yourself that, I think you're ultimately going to do a disservice. You kind of have to find this balance between, okay, every day is a blessing. What am I going to do with it? But also understand, okay, I can't just live for the next at bat. I can't just try to survive. I do have to progress. Especially when you are one of those guys like myself who is not a high equity draft pick. I certainly wasn't, I had time, I had some money invested in me, but if you're talking about like, was it $1 million 40-man contract? No, certainly not. So you kind of have to find that balance. And I think on that note, maybe I'll jump in here to share a story that I found interesting. So I had a pitching coach my last year with the Orioles. His name was Alan Mills. And for those of you who don't know Mills, he was famous for knocking out Darryl Strawberry in a brawl between the Orioles and the Yankees. And he was simultaneously one of the scariest guys I ever met, in addition to being one of the nicest, kindest guys I've ever met. But my last year with the Orioles, it was pretty evident that my career had stagnated, and I was not going anywhere. And it was kind of this battle of seeing your own, sport mortality and coming to terms with it. And so I was stressed out. I wasn't pitching well. And it was like this downward spiral. I wasn't pitching well, so I thought I was going to get cut. And I was probably going to get cut because I wasn't pitching well. And I remember Mills pulled me in his office one day and looked at me, and he didn't say anything to me. He was looking me in the eyes and said, he always called everyone Meat. He said, "Hey, Meat, you're going to die one day." It's like, fuck, thanks, Mills. I really feel a lot better right now. But he's like, no, I want you to think about this, right? Like, regardless of who you are, baseball's, or I guess any sport in this instance, is going to get taken from you, right? It might be today, it might be 20 years from now, but at the end of the day, we all face the same fate. You can't stop it. No matter how hard you fight, no matter how much you worry, at the end of the day, this game is going to be taken from you. So you can either go through it dreading the existence of losing it, or you can go through and view every day as a blessing to play a game that you love. And there was something about that speech, as macabre as it may be, that was liberating. It removed the burden from you, because you, especially in professional baseball, you fight so hard not to get cut, and you fight so hard to stay in the game. The realization that no matter how hard I fight, it will eventually be taken from me was awesome. And I certainly performed much, much better, which is not to say that I'm a professional athlete, because here I am to this day at 32, not playing professional baseball. But there was something very liberating about that. And I think it kind of ties into all of this, which is, don't lose sight of the fact that the game is a game and it's fun. I think when you play it like that, and when you play it with passion, and you play it with a true love of whatever it is, and this applies not just to sport, but anything, with a true love and passion that you throw yourself into, and you're grateful for every day, and you're making the most of every day, not looking at what might come down the road, not looking at the consequences that might come if you have a bad day, you're much more likely to be successful. And like I said, I think that applies not just to sport, but really anything in life.
It's something that I never had to interact with, because it was never a matter of cut or not cut, right? When you sign up for Division III basketball, I use the word sign up, by the way, you didn't notice. I didn't say you're not on scholarship. You decide to volunteer your time to play and buy your own uniform kind of situation. You've already signed that check. You just know it's coming to be cashed in 4 years.
This is already finite.
Yeah, we've entered, and that was actually really difficult because that's something I ran into in college where I kind of stopped caring a little bit on my junior year. I actually really enjoyed it my senior year, my last year, because it was kind of a moment where it was like, well, this is over. Like, let's just have fun.
Exactly.
But there was also a very disheartening moment my junior year where you start not playing well and you're kind of like, yeah, this is stupid. Like I'm done next year anyway. And you start to waver.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually something. Now I'm not for quitting. That's not the right word, but it's evaluating the realities of life too. It's like, I am not going to be a pro. Like I should probably learn something in class.
Yeah.
Like I really should, have a difficult discussion with myself and realize, let's enjoy what I have here. But maybe I'm not going to spend every 3 hours in the gym because, part of the benefits of my basketball is I get schooling. And so if I should focus on that a little bit, because that's going to come knocking sooner than later. Cool. So let's dive into question number 2 here. All right. I'm actually didn't send you this question, and this is something we're kind of going into it rogue a little bit. If social media was more of a thing when you play, which it wasn't, by the way, social media did not really become a thing. Would you, looking back on it, have engaged in that means and not necessarily document, but find ways to creatively enjoy the minor league lifestyle, and almost in a sick, ironic way, the efforts of agony become somewhat comedic and enjoyable, because I can only imagine those.
Yes, the answer is yes. I think minor league baseball especially is such this, like, it has almost a mystique about it, right? Like, think Field of Dreams, where like baseball's the pastime, and you look at it and you say, oh, these young kids, and I think everyone assumes that you're making out like a bandit, right? And I think a lot of that's because for every first through fifth rounder who gets a huge paycheck and goes and buys a brand new Chevy Tahoe with all the trimmings, they see those parked in the parking lot, but you don't see the 97 Saturn L series sitting out there that some guy drove up from, some city in Texarkana I've never heard of before. So I think kind of pulling back the curtain on minor league baseball a little bit is awesome. But I also think it's because minor league baseball has such personality to it. And it's something that a lot of people don't see until you're in it, right? The term professional baseball refers only to the fact that you're getting paid. Most certainly does not refer to the way that you carry yourself.
Yes.
It is especially true in the minor leagues. So I've seen books, and shameless plug.
We're gonna plug. We should probably do.
We're gonna plug that.
We should plug as much. I should plug at the beginning. I might try and find a way to make a separate intro as our actual part 1 for this too. People listening, this is very unscripted. This is what happens when you have family talking. Just starts talking. But plug. Let's hear it. What is it?
This is when you wind up cutting this and editing this. It's not gonna make any sense.
I'm not gonna edit this. This is gonna be question number 2.
Raw and unfiltered.
I think that's how it's gonna have to be. So continue. I would let it fly. And
shameless plug. Am I allowed to plug it?
Plug the daylights out of it, and then we'll make a separate intro where we plug it again.
So we're going to plug the plug. So this is my plug for the plug. If you're listening to this, I want you to rewind and go back to the beginning of this episode and listen
just pretend like this is the beginning.
This is the beginning. Okay.
Just pretend. If you're a listener, pretend. Close your eyes for a minute.
You get to act like it's the first time all over again.
Yep. Just close your eyes for a minute. 3, 2, and 1 plug.
Shameless plug. So in minor league baseball, you have clubhouse attendance. So in minor league baseball, your whole job revolves around the field, and you're typically there. I wish I could tell you the exact hours, but it's 12 hours a day, easy. That doesn't include the travel, all the other stuff. This is just, practice, weight room, prepping, stretching, everything that goes with being a professional athlete. And if there's no video, this is in quotation professional, but a clubhouse attendant is, I don't want to disparage them. It's almost like you're the team mom. So when clothes get washed after a game, clubhouse attendant handles it. Food needs to come out for lunch, needs to come out before the game, needs to come out after the game. Clubhouse attendant handles it. The clubhouse needs to be cleaned up. Attendant handles it. Any of the kind of stuff that comes with just life in general that you don't have time to do. Hey, I have my girlfriend coming in. Can you go buy her a dozen roses? I have a favor. Can you go pick this up from the store because I didn't have time today? Clubhouse attendant handles. And so a clubhouse attendant is like, they have this really interesting view because they are ultimately part of the team. 100% they are part of it. But they have a view kind of from the outsider looking in because I think they can see how ridiculous we really are, we being the players. Because you see a bunch of kids, and that's what they are. It's kids with $1 million, paychecks who don't know how to live real life. You can't wash your clothes. Most of them know how to cook for themselves. And so this poor, unfortunate soul kind of gets thrust into it. So my shameless plug is that Greg Larson, one of my best friends from minor league baseball and an absolutely gifted author. Like, I can't plug this book enough because it will whisk you away to a world that I can assure you that I know, and it's a very authentic version of it. But his book is called Clubbie. It's a minor league clubhouse attendance memoirs. And so it's a really interesting book. But for those of you, because I mentioned that, professionals is the fact that we get paid, not how we carry ourselves. It's a really good look into what I'm talking about, kind of the shenanigans that exist, the dynamics. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stress because you kind of have people you don't know all coming in, testosterone filled, a lot of egos, you kind of butt heads at times, but you also develop these wonderful, amazing friendships because you talk about minor league baseball. And one of the things that people don't realize is you will spend every waking minute and sometimes every sleeping minute as well with these people. Every day is with them, from when you come to the clubhouse to when you leave, and you live with a lot of these guys too. So the friendships you develop are next level. So to answer this question has gone all the way around, but to bring it back to the original question, would I have engaged in social media? Definitely. I love minor league baseball. I wish people could see it. I think people would have, minor league baseball, as I mentioned before, has a mystique, but I think that to give people the experience, a glimpse into it, which I think Greg's book does, is something that I wish I could have done via social media. So yes, it was definitely, social media was not the big thing that it is now. I think the lightheartedness and the really purity of baseball that minor league baseball really is, I would have loved for people to be a part of, because I think that's a magical thing that few people are privy to.
That well put. And for those of you, once you find the book, which wasn't even the world's most confusing plug, what is the name of the book?
I believe I just saw it. It's Clubbie, a minor league baseball memoir.
Okay, so that is the title.
That is the name of it. Yes.
For some reason I thought that's how you were describing.
No.
I feel stupid now. Okay.
No, but Greg is, you could tell talking to him in the clubhouse and playing minor league ball that Greg had something special about him. The way that he viewed the whole circus that is a minor league clubhouse. He had deep, insightful views on it. He was someone I loved to talk to. I talked to him all the time because he, like I said, he was an outsider insofar as that he wasn't, on the field with us, but he was definitely part of the team and part of the family that is minor league baseball, because he's in that clubhouse every day with us. So I loved talking to him, but more importantly, he had this really interesting take. He had an authentic view of what it was. Because I think whenever you're in it, regardless of if it's sport or a company or whatever you're participating in, I think when you're in it, your view becomes romanticized. You see yourself as this, the star of your own movie. And Greg had this really interesting way of pulling back the curtain and being like, I hope you see it the way I see it. And he's done a great job of showing that in his book. I can't recommend it enough. It is the most authentic accounting of what a minor league clubhouse is like. I cannot recommend it enough.
Go check it out. People. I'll put a link in the bio description, whatever the heck you call it thing in the bottom of YouTube. Clubbie,
a minor league baseball memoir.
Minor league baseball memoir, and whomever he might write about. If only we could get one of those people in the podcast one day. We'll work towards that. I do want to share one thing, though, a little bit off topic. We had an individual who was our team manager. His name was David Slocum, and this guy was awesome. Sloke Daddy, we'd call him. And he big basketball fan. Just loved basketball. Wanted to be part of the team. Wasn't really the greatest basketball player, but just loved basketball. So he came in, ran the scoreboard in practice, helped out where he could. And long story short, because he kind of reminds me a little bit of what would be a team manager in that essence. But he there's one magical moment, because I think all these people, we have situations where we don't appreciate the sport we're playing because at the time we're doing it, we're too wrapped our heads around it. And there's a moment where we had to make some shots, whatever, to not run. A very small moment. And Sloke raises his hand from like the sideline.
Hell yeah.
And we're like, okay, Sloke, why not? And so we got conditioning if we don't make it. And Sloke has to hit 3 shots. He's got to hit a layup, a free throw, and a 3 in 30 seconds. And so
probably harder than it sounds.
It is, because you one bad miss and you're in a pickle, right? So it's really not easy. So gets the ball, right? Start the clock, go, makes a layup easy, obviously. Takes a step back, goes through his free throw routine. And we're all yelling, just shoot the damn ball. We're screaming, shoot it. And he just cash. So there's 4 seconds left. And we're like, good Lord, we're screwed. And he goes up there and gets the 3-point line and like scratches his beard, flips it, shoots it, and just yada, nothing but net. And it was one of those moments where it was like, this is fun. Like, I forgot this is a game. You know what I mean? Like, because it is a game. He's not shooting for playing time. He's not shooting for anything other than just making sure we don't run. And it was a nice reflection on the enjoyment that sport brings, and in a way that maybe the book kind of reflects on some of the realities of that is, you know, professional baseball, probably at a deeper level than that, but maybe a parallel we can draw.
It's the connections you make with sport that are so important. We just came off March Madness, the Gonzaga UCLA game, where very similar player makes a very important 3-pointer with 3 seconds left. But asking you right now, which 3-pointer is more special to you? Gonzaga's, or I'm sorry, I forgot his name already.
Suggs.
Suggs. Which one's more important, or which one's more important to you?
Johnny
Yours
Juzang. My 3-pointer I made?
Your 3-pointer or Gonzaga's? No, the one your clubhouse attendant made.
Oh, for me is the attendant, right? The enjoyment in the moment, right?
Because it's those connections to sport that matter most to us. We can all enjoy sport from an observer, watching high-level athletes play, but there's something about sports connection to you personally that I find so magical.
Oh, absolutely. I play pickup softball. I guess it's not pickup, it's organized.
Pickup? You just kind of show up like the Sandlot.
Well, we're not on the team, so it's kind of, they pick us up for the team when they're out of play. So it's kind of loosely pick up. And I hit nukes. And every time I hit one, there is when the moment hits the ball to where the ball lands, that moment in time is hard to beat.
Speaking of the unwavering confidence required in sport, I appreciate the fact that you are not afraid to let your readers know that you drop nukes.
Hey, plug, when Dakota and I trained, I made him always pitch me soft top quite a bit on the hit tracks. And my exit velo on one of them was 104 miles an hour, 440 foot, just wood bat, by the way, wood composite bat, just tater tot.
So what I'm hearing is that Dakota, a professional major league pitcher, you hit nukes off of a major league pitcher. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Non-contextually descript, I guess, and technicalities.
Answer the question, yes or no.
The answer is no, because I have too much respect for him. How about that?
Of course, I'm just messing.
All right. Cool. Question numero 3. This is submitted from the audience, so thank you, listeners.
The audience is so good.
There is no descriptor of who the audience member was. If you had to reflect on baseball as a whole, would you say you learned more during baseball or after baseball?
Yes.
The lessons it taught you, I should say.
Yes. And what I mean by that is,
what a cool
I've been waiting since last night to give that answer. I hope that was as magical as I've been waiting so long, and you did not receive it the way I expected.
Only you can stop forest fires. You selected me. The correct answer is you.
To answer your question, I thought that was really sharp. So I don't appreciate your knocking it down.
That was a Simpsons quote, by the way, for all my listeners out there.
It's my favorite Simpsons quote, because for all you listeners and followers, Max phrases his poll questions on his Instagram page in the most confusing fashion in the world. who could eat more Chipotle, me or Hugh? And I'm sitting there like, okay, is me referring to me or is me referring to you? It's very confusing. I didn't know which one to select.
All right, go ahead and answer it. My goodness, I should stop.
The answer I would say is you constantly learn more. And as you gain context into yourself as you grow, and thankfully, I would say as sport evolves, because if there's one thing that baseball is undergoing, it's sort of a revolution that started with sabermetrics about how we measure potentials for success. You constantly look back at your own experience and say, I wonder if I had the knowledge, for instance, spin rate and pitch creation, kind of as Rapsodo has been more universally adopted. So the ability to measure things that were previously immeasurable, or rather, I wouldn't say immeasurable, but you measured them with kind of the wisdom of a major league scout who doesn't know why it's happening, but just know that it happens. And you can now put a number on it. And you kind of look at Trevor Bauer as the poster child for that. You look at it and can't help but wonder, had I had access to this, how might my career have been different? And you say to yourself, I think back to the times when, hey, for those 6 months, my curveball was better than it's ever been. I wish I could have captured the data on why that was and taken it to a time when my curveball was terrible and said, what am I doing differently, both mechanically, and what am I doing differently with how this pitch is released? Is the spin rate off? Is the axis different? So you look at that, and that's interesting. So I'm rambling, and I apologize. The answer is I'm constantly learning, but I would say that I learned more about baseball after I stopped playing. And what I mean by that is you're kind of able to look at your career much more objectively. In the moment, I think you kind of have a difficult time separating yourself from what is really happening. But I learned more about myself while playing baseball. So it's kind of because when playing baseball, I think with sport in general, you have to learn how to cope and deal with failure, a skill that is unbelievably underrated as you go through life. It teaches you persistence. It teaches you the value of consistency, and it teaches you the value of at least trying to objectively and accurately assess your own performance. And I think I can only speak anecdotally because I am not in the corporate world in so much as I would like to be. But talking from friends who are a part of it, there's sort of this intangibleness, if that's even a word, that athletes have when they come to the corporate world, because being told no or being told this didn't work out doesn't have the same impact that it might have on others. And I think that's true, obviously, for professional or amateur, because you learn to deal with it. So introspectively about myself, I learned a ton from baseball, and I've grown a ton as a person from baseball. But I think when you step out of baseball, and I coached baseball for a little bit, and I was very lucky. I had an opportunity to work with Jason Saccani from TPC Baseball, who I think is one of the best pitching coaches in the Bay Area. And I had a chance to work with Adam Farb, Jim Sammons, and a bunch of others over at NCTB Baseball, which is a group that runs tournaments in the Bay Area as well. Those guys, what Jason did from the aspect of learning to how to pitch, and what NCTB did in terms of putting me in front of some of the very best young baseball players out there, in being out the game, I was able to objectively learn more about baseball because I could kind of see how each one of these guys progressed. So for me to answer your question, I learned more about baseball after leaving baseball. And I think the guys who have success in baseball, at least a lot of the guys who have success in baseball, they're able to do what I did when I left baseball. I had a hard time when I was in baseball to objectively measure things and say, what do I need to do to be successful right now? Maybe because I was so passionate about baseball, maybe because I was just terrified of losing baseball. But when I left it, I kind of had a free and clear mind. The guys who are successful in baseball, the guys who I played with, and I use baseball, but you can use any sport. The guys I played with who were able to look at each day with I don't want to say without passion, but without emotion, and say, what did I do today that was successful? What did I do today that was not successful? And what happened today that was outside of my control? The guys who were able to do that were the ones who found long-term success. Does that mean you're going to be a LeBron James? No, LeBron James is the only LeBron James because he is something that no one else has done. But the guys who kind of are the unsung heroes of sport, the guys who are maybe your 7th, 8th, 9th man off the bench, or maybe this is your 4th or 5th pitcher in the rotation or your reliever. It's those kind of guys who come up through the ranks because they're intelligent, they understand baseball, and more importantly, they've mastered themselves because they're able to look at this and say, what do I need to do to succeed? Because a lot of the time, especially when you come into professional baseball, you're so used to just being you and having success that it's a difficult conversation to have with yourself saying, I'm not as good as I thought I was. Let me do what I need to do to be successful.
Interesting. I have no comment on that because I did not play baseball in that level, but nor was I a professional athlete because I learned some stuff from basketball. Don't get me wrong. Yes, it was great. No, it never held the threat of losing and positions and job, and it was far enough from reaching dreams that it never was a dream. And that's kind of a bad way to say it, but it's kind of truthful. Like it never, I didn't even get to play Division I in college March Madness. There's no pro talk there. So like there's certain levels of falling short that existed that, you learned a lot in basketball, but you also learned a lot about just life and how certain things don't matter as much maybe as you thought they did. And certain things matter more. So all in all, not a huge it was basketball was a huge learning for me. Yes. Was college basketball the learning pinnacle? No. That's what I'm trying to say.
Fair enough.
Okay. Well, we're going to a little quicker round here because there's some good questions. I'm diving some fun here. If you had 1 year, no job, and all you had to do is get ready to throw 99 miles an hour, could you do it?
99 off a mound.
Off a mound, 99. And you get all the weight room, whatever you want. I can train you. I don't have to train you.
Well,
Anyone can train you.
If I get a year, no job, you're training me. I think there's physical limitations. I think I would come close. If you said 99, I'm not willing to take that. But if you had said 97, I'll take it.
You think 97, we can't eke out 99?
I don't know. I do believe that there are certain physical limitations based upon, bone structure, inherent flexibility, range of motion in certain joints, and just your overall, composition of type 2 muscle fibers.
I'm talking about getting really aggressive in our training though. We have because
right.
safety's thrown to the wind, right? There's no
shameless plug for all the audience listeners out here. If you want to pay my mortgage for a year and allow me to go train for a year, we will have our answer to this question. I don't know. I would love to take that.
Because what happens is a difference. People listen to, if you get other people throwing 99 miles an hour. When you have someone who's not playing a professional sport currently, and you don't care about injury, and the only goal.
Oh yeah,
right. Like you can take steps that wouldn't be reasonable otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
That's like my jump training. I get more banged up jump training because I'm not playing a sport. And I got to find the edge because there's no way I would push an athlete to that edge. Like I'll push myself to it, but like, man, that's stupid. We don't do that stuff with an athlete. They got to do things in life, and that's part of the limit, right? No one said highest performance is safest performance. And that's just the fact of the matter.
That's true. No, that's a good point too. And I think that kind of goes into talking about like accurately assessing things like, for a professional athlete, is it even worth it to run this risk? Like, no, that's stupid. No. But maybe this is where, I talk about like accurately assessing who you are. If you're a guy who's, not going to make it anyways, I'm not advocating for dangerous things. Please don't think that for a second. But
no, you're advocating for a rate limiting approach.
Go on.
Understand your limiting factor. And yes. If your limiting factor is something that requires whatever means it is, then maybe those means need to be explored to an extent in a safe way.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's a big part of it. Like if you say to yourself, hey, on my current trajectory, on my current path, this will not end at the goal that I want. then why would you continue on that path? Assess it. And even though it may not be glamorous and it requires a serious dose of humility, why not look at it and say, all right, this needs to change? Because I can with a fair degree of confidence predict where this is going to wind up, which is to say, if you're a triple A, starter, don't do that. You're probably on the cusp of making the big leagues as it is. But if you're someone, I don't even know what age I would classify, because I don't think it's necessarily based on an age. But if you're a 32-year-old washed up former single A player like myself, then yes, absolutely, now is the time for that. Like if I said to myself, I want to make a comeback, that is absolutely how I would do it. 100%, I would just go do some crazy shit. Am I allowed to swear? Because I'm going to.
I don't care.
Cool. I would do some crazy shit. If I had a year and they said, obviously no job, whatever, the way that I trained to try to make a comeback would not be a way that I would recommend anybody to train.
That is well put. And always be safe, listeners.
Because I am a 32-year-old Scribini. That is why. So
a Scribola. All right. Well, one last question, one last topic I want to dive into. And listeners, by the way, guys, if you hung around this long and you enjoy the conversation, let me know. Comment below. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. We'll get them back on the show if you're interested. If you don't want him back,
the real star of the show was.
If you don't want him back, we don't have to. We'll invite back one of his many aliases.
Your comment section.
Keep bringing you back on, but it's clearly you with a different name. Like, that's still the same dude. Like,
if they turn the video on, they're not going to know if they're kicking me off or you off. They're going to be like, which one is it? I can't tell.
Actually, we might have the video on this. Who knows? All right, but any wild stories you want to talk about, because you did play, there's a lot of stories. And I will have you come on for separate story time. So we might actually, you know what? Give me a story that you can share that's not horribly long, because there's some independent ball stories I want to ask about.
Independent ball.
We're not going to talk about that here. We'll save that for
no independent ball stories.
No, I want to have a separate podcast as indie ball stories with you.
Okay.
We'll have a separate discussion.
Independent ball every single day. It was like you come in, you're like, well, the good news is yesterday was awful. Today can't possibly get any worse. And then some crazy shit happens. You're like, wow, this is. And I played in the indie ball of the indie balls. There are like, for indie ball guys, like, the Frontier League or the Can-Am League, I don't even know if they're still around, or the Atlantic League, which are like really well run, professional, like really, top of the class independent leagues. In the league I played in, the United Baseball League, was ran by like corrupt former senators. Like, you ever seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where the guy has like the straw hat and he's fat and he's like fanning himself? Like, those are the kind of guys who owned our team. It was like the craziest, most surreal thing ever. So we'll save those stories for a different day.
That's a teaser. That's coming up, people.
Okay, so
be excited.
I think.
How about one story that taught you quite a bit? Maybe we'll stick with the theme of baseball teaching us. Is there an experience or a story, I'll word this a little better, that led to a learning lesson that someone else, if you shared that, could benefit from?
So Mills' story is the one that stands out the most. That simple statement of one day you're going to die. And I almost use it as a mantra for life. When you kind of worry about stuff that's not going to matter. That's a big one for me. It's very powerful for me because it kind of puts everything into context. Like, this is a silly game. Why am I acting like this is my entire identity? I don't know if I have any stories I can think of. I'm kind of unprepared for this one. If I
did that on purpose, listeners. And my brother, I get to hold his feet to the fire only so often. Is it that time when you found the LeBron James rookie card in my fire safe?
So for listeners, Max has been much like every pair of young 8-year-olds. Our father was convinced that baseball cards and basketball cards were going to be this untapped fortune, that if we held on to them, we would.
Partially correct.
Which he wasn't wrong. So
we invested in the wrong sport, though. If we did basketball, we would have a new house.
Yeah, I still live in California, so I went to see our parents, and Max was convincing me that his old treasure trove of baseball cards. Is that you? Or is that me?
Technologies advisor.
What the hell is going on?
Well, that was weird. I don't know what. We just got a rogue ad read in there from an unsponsored ad. So he's muted right now until he can figure out what the hell he's doing on his computer. So you
I
can give
had
me
looked up. I had looked.
I muted him again. Gave him the boots. Off the team.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Trader Joe's doesn't have creamed corn, so I was looking for a recipe prior to this for how to make creamed corn out of canned corn. If you're wondering what my life is currently like, this is pretty much been the highlight of my day, trying to make creamed corn out of canned corn. So I wouldn't take any advice from me. I kind of just delegitimize myself.
Well, go ahead. At the end of the day, the point is, I want to wrap this up here because this has gone off the rails. We just had a cream corn ad that finished up. We're about to talk about fire safes. This podcast.
Can we delete all this? Can we edit all this? I don't even know.
There's no editing involved. I don't know how to edit things.
We do it. This is once and for all type of thing. We just do it. All right.
I might make clips, but I'm not editing this. Do you know how lazy I am?
I'm terrified now. I wish I had known this prior.
I told you that.
I certainly wouldn't have been looking up recipes for creamed corn had I known that.
Honestly, embarrassing. Well, you know what, everyone? Wonderful time having this man on, whomever he might be.
This mysterious man.
Even though his name's in the title of the podcast.
Yes.
And he's in the book Clubbie, which you can check
Minor
it out.
League Baseball Memoir. No, seriously, check that book out. I'm not just saying this because Greg's
I like how you say, like, you really feel adamant to fill out the Minor League Baseball Memoir at the end of it.
I don't know. It's an hey, if you just hear the word clubby, who knows what it means? Maybe you're someone who sells golf clubs. I don't maybe you're someone who frequents nightclubs. maybe you're an avid spades player and your favorite suit are clubs. I don't know. It could be anything. Context is key.
I appreciate everyone listening. If you made it this far, thank you. I'm gonna put the tyrannical stamp of vetoing the continuation of this podcast and use my dictatorial power to declare this finite. We're done.
Declare it over.
Well, I appreciate you guys listening. Alec, thank you for having me. Thank you for coming on. We'll have you back on again in the near future. And I hope you guys enjoy listening to this. Hopefully you stuck around. If you guys like it, feel free to give me some plugs, share, talk about this. I don't care what you do. Hopefully big news stations pick this up. We're expecting that. I understand neither of us are really that popular, but we hope to be. So I appreciate you guys listening, and I hope you enjoy.